Look, I'll wear a hat.
Yeah, okay. It's already been
1 week.
I'm like,
my week already has started kind of weird. We spent the weekend, with people shooting stuff and things. Now I'm back basically at my house again, and it feels weird. It feels weird, but I also don't want to go anywhere. So, what is that psychology?
We've all entered a deep depression from this year, and there is no return.
There is no return. Whew. This cold open isn't going very well. Mike's like reading something. What's?
No, I'm totally involved. I wasn't.
You had a vacation.
I'm not at work right now.
me neither.
Mike had a vacation last week. How was that, Mike?
It was a living nightmare of which I'd like to forget.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a
Surrealer.
yeah.
It was fine.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Level 1 GM. I am your Level 1 GM, your not smart GM. My name is Chad, and we are joined today by our smart GM, Mike, who's back from his vacation. Thank you for joining us, Mike. And we also have our other smart GM. We got Laura over here. She's going to join the conversation. And yet another smart GM, Phil. Thanks for joining us. But Phil is also working. Don't tell his boss.
Same.
So
I sent some emails I needed. Can you take those back? I don't think you could take those back.
yeah, there's no unsend. Don't we all wish there was an unsend?
You know who definitely does? Chris Evans. He wishes there was an unsend. Just
So
state this.
I mean, is anybody have we looked at the pictures? Anyone?
No, I don't look at leaked nudes.
No, me
Seems
neither.
weird.
It's not cool.
Even when they accidentally self-leak,
Yeah,
like
right?
he did on Twitter, which I believe because he seems like he's just. She's Googling. You can see Laura Google right now. He accidentally leaked his own nude.
But
Weird.
I always ask the question, why are you taking a photo of yourself naked? I'm assuming to send to someone, but still, why would you
Proctologist.
on a phone, right, Laura? I mean, what? If you're going to do that, use something that's not connected to the internet, okay?
Okay, maybe all of us wouldn't take pictures of ourselves naked to send to people.
Okay.
But Chris Evans
Yeah.
has reasons
Yeah.
to take pictures of himself, right?
And
People want to see him naked.
Well, he can.
I was gonna say, like, I wouldn't do that because I'm not comfortable with my body in clothes. So remove that layer, and I am even more just anxiety goes to here. So there will never be a nude
Yeah.
of me anywhere.
Well, if you've watched any amount of pornography, our idea of how big a regular sized penis should be is completely warped.
I have ruined this
So
show. I was just trying to do a throwaway joke, and this went.
no, it grabbed
Really
and it
far.
took and it held. So yeah, obviously we're talking about gaming here.
Let's restart the recording. Hey, welcome back to Low GM.
I could make this conversation worse real quick.
Nope,
No thanks.
We're good.
When we're not talking about Chris Evans' penis, we talk about gaming, role playing, and being a GM, especially a new GM, which is me. So over the past couple of episodes, we've talked a lot about sort of expectations and GM's expectation, player expectation, stuff like that. And something I think that's come up a couple of times in those conversations is this idea of bending the rules just a little bit. Mike, let's start with you. Let's talk about rules.
I was the person who kind of pitched this idea, and the reason I wanted to do that is because if you watched last week's episodes while I was gone, Laura ran a nice little, a tight little bow ribbon one shot that ended up taking 2 nights. And at the end, what happened again, Laura?
I killed everyone.
Ah, you're right. You killed everyone.
We all died.
Or as I
Spectacularly.
said to Chad the first time I saw him when we were on set this weekend, she kicked your fucking ass. And that the reason I wanted to bring it up is because there's a long-standing agreement amongst D&D players and GMs that the rules in really any role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game, are guidelines. It's widely we all say, oh, it's just guidelines, adjust it how you will, be nice, be lenient. The reason I bring it up here is because Laura did something I think actually takes a good GM to do, and that is she followed the rules to the letter. A lot of people choose to be nice. Now, by nice, I mean bending the rules as a GM, saying, oh, sure, that kills it. I'll lower its HP. We've talked about this numerous times. For the sake of narrative or the sake of player enjoyment, sometimes you bend the rules. I think a more interesting discussion is when to follow them strictly. You had established for this one shot, Laura, that you were going to do a dungeon crawl. Yes? Describe a dungeon crawl, please.
So actually what I used, Dungeon Crawl essentially has very little story involved in it. It's just going room to room, solving puzzles and or killing the things that happen to be in the room. It is excellent for players who are kind of murder hobo-y and don't really care about RP, don't care about the progression of a story, just want to build massive characters and go in and beat shit up and get all the gold. It was an excellent choice for what we were doing, knowing that Mike was going to be gone. We called it a one-shot, knowing from the beginning it was going to be a two-shot because we weren't going to run Wednesday and Thursday without Mike. So I chose a particular dungeon from Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which is a great little module for folks if you're wanting just little one-shots or two-shots, because you can run each floor individually. It has about 24 different maps, and they progressively get more difficult level to level. You can play it as a full, all the way through kind of campaign as well, which makes for a good campaign, especially for kind of beginning learning players, because they can take their players or their characters from level 1 to about level 17 plus in that one particular module, just going through dungeons.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah. So pretty sick for that. The other thing that we decided to do, instead of making the folks who would be playing those 2 days take time and actually think about and create a higher level character, which is something we wanted to do because if you've noticed, we rarely get to the level 17s, level 13s in our campaigns. We generally, most of the time, are ending around level 10-ish is when the campaigns tend to kind of end. So we thought we want to do a higher level campaign, higher level one-shot, but instead of actually forcing folks to think about it, we used the random character generator on D&D Beyond. You can plug in some particulars about the characters that you're wanting to build, like level. You can choose a class if you want to. You can say whether you're allowing multi-class. It's a really neat feature. What it didn't do was build really fully functional characters, which kind of added to the fun. Morgan's Barbarian, for example, was built with a +4 intelligence and a -1 strength, which makes total sense for a barbarian.
That AI failed there, yeah.
But I give them a couple extra parameters, like they could choose a magic item, they could have a +1 weapon and armor, just things that you would normally have by level 13.
Bars actually brings up an excellent point, and it was what point I was about to get to. That is a great time to kill everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That is a great time to strictly follow the rules to the letter. You have established we're just doing this one session, this one dungeon playthrough. These aren't overarching characters. There's no larger narrative. We're going to do this. I'm going to make it hard. I'm going to follow the rules to a T. And if you get through, then that's the achievement. If you don't, then that's the experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think winning in the concept of tabletop role-playing is a fallacy that everybody, including the GM, needs to get over.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you lose. And not playing nice all of the time, even if in your overarching campaign, is good for narrative and good for player involvement. Making them always feel like gods, making them always feel great, doesn't hold attention, doesn't hold player interest forever. Really doesn't.
Now, you brought up in the past that, as a tool, both to I don't know if you want to say, bring your players back into line, or in mostly though just as a narrative tool, kicking their asses hard can
which does involve killing them sometimes.
Absolutely can. So I mean, obviously we talked about a one shot or a two shot, perfect time to sort of just strictly follow those rules for the potential of total disaster happening for that party. Are there some other moments that you should follow those rules very specifically during a longer form campaign?
Yes, for the sake of consequence. And it's similar to the kicking their ass, but not really. There can become an attitude, a sort of toxic attitude, that the GM is your safety net. So it doesn't matter what all nonsense I come up with and do or try to do as a player. There is no true consequence because the GM will swoop in with plot armor and stop my character from having true consequence. It's not about keeping your players in line. It's about keeping... This is going back to expectations. It's about keeping appropriate expectation. This is how you keep expectations settled, right? If you are aware that consequences could be a thing for your player, then we're moving in the right way. If you're acting in a way as such consequences shouldn't be a thing, then maybe consequences should befall you. And that often is clearly defined within rules. A player going, you as a GM going, there's a spike pit below you, it's probably 45 feet, it's 20 feet across, and they go, well, I have a great athletics, I'm not worried at all. And then they roll, and they roll like shit.
Consequences.
You didn't try to find a creative workaround for the spike pit. You didn't try to work with your team to craft a way around it. You didn't try to fix it in some way. You just tried to muscle your way through it, and you failed. So in that failure, there should be consequence. And 1d6 per 10 feet of traveled movement, gravity falling down, plus spikes at the bottom is another d8 of plus 2 damage. We'll do 45 feet. Let's put that at roughly 5d6 plus 1d8 plus 3. What are you, level 3? Okay, reroll.
Yeah, you might want to be a little, I don't know, more cautious. Yeah.
I think, too, there are some aspects of the player's handbook and the DM guide that the rules are really important for balance purposes. I think specifically of casters that can only cast one spell per turn, even if they have another spell that's a bonus action. So they can't actually cast 2 level 1 spells or a level 1 and level something else. They can do a cantrip as a bonus action, but not a second spell. There are a couple feats that allow that later on, like Warcaster kind of helps with that a little bit. But imagine later on down the road, you've got a level 13 cleric who, if that rule wasn't in place, could be casting like a level 6 spell and then a level 4 bonus action of some sort. It just becomes completely OP. So there are some specific rules in those areas that are meant for balance purposes that help. I think for me also, I kind of live by in those areas of whether or not to follow the rules exactly. The rule of cool is a rule that I've heard a lot, where if a spell, they're saying a spell or they're saying an action that they want to do, and it's not exactly how it's written, but it would make for a really cool moment. Hell yes, I'm going to let it go that direction. I'm going to let that spell work in that way, even though if that's not necessarily how it would normally work, because it's something that's fucking cool.
One I saw online that's a perfect example of that recently was a druid casting control small animal to control a mosquito to bite the big bad evil guy that the cleric has cast create disease there within, giving the evil guy malaria.
Yeah, see? Like, sometimes your players just come up with the wildest shit in their heads, and it's not necessarily following every rule in the rule book, but it makes for really awesome moments like that. I'm always going to let that fly. Unless it's something completely out of whack that wouldn't actually happen, but yeah.
The druid continually casting polymorph on the pixie wizard, polymorph into a elephant to drop onto people over and over and over and over again.
So would you say that's part? I mean, obviously it's a big part of the GM's job is to decide when to apply those rules.
Yes,
right? I mean,
and I think that requires a good understanding of those rules as well.
Right.
It's easy to break things you don't understand, but it's impossible to enforce things you don't understand. Enforcing the rules and creating boundaries are as important as being cool with your players, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like a fleshed out world if anything's possible. Right. Because even if there's magic, you're a dude.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're a dude walking around, and maybe you have magic, but there was probably somebody else other than Merlin, like Ted, who was in his wizarding class, and Ted wasn't as good. You're probably Ted, not Merlin. So,
right.
Phil, from a player's perspective, when do you like following rules?
Never.
I didn't ask you, Morgan.
I am the kind of person who, when I'm playing, likes the idea of the world being, all the role playing, everything being bound in a certain set of rules. I'm not always happy with the results. It's like, in theory, I always want things to run by the rules, but I also have a history of very bad rolls.
You do.
No.
You do. Mm-hmm.
I should never go to Vegas.
No.
Never. I should not come within 50 square miles of that city.
But that brings up another thing, Phil. What's a time in which the rules dicked you over, but it became a cool role? It became a cool experience. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, failure can be kind of fun.
It's never cool. Failures are never cool for me. Sometimes they're comical, but I would never say it turns into something cool.
Well, one that immediately jumps into my mind is I throw the rope.
Yeah,
which is a classic Durnk Industries sort of meme at this point.
It's becoming its own meme. It's totally true.
Yeah, that I enjoy the throw the rope gag, but it was never so funny as when Simone did it for the first time. The callbacks to it are great, but you can't beat the original moment.
No, that's what I'm talking about. That first moment when Simone decides, I throw the rope. All right, you weren't hanging on. Nobody was hanging on to it. You just throw the rope. But like all of it, I guess it's all gone.
Just throw the rope into the pit, right on top of the spider that is now carrying away our elf friend.
That's not necessarily a written, and that's a good case of a not necessarily written or established rule. It's just sort of the rule of verbiage, or like what you say, because of the nature of role playing. What you say is what is happening. So
what
then
you
that
say
should count as the rule.
Right.
Like you should watch what you say.
And those are some things that here we start to talk about rules that are established kind of early on, that sort of consistency of gameplay, right? It's like
Numbers and stuff, stats and stuff.
Right, but you obviously have the roles, the stats, the stuff that's laid out, in the manuals. But then you've also got you didn't say somebody was holding on to it. Or you didn't say you went to an alley to have this conversation. You
just started having it in the middle of the street.
You just
full of people.
You just turned into something. Yeah, stuff like that. So I mean, and I think those kind of rules, it's about that consistency, right? I mean, people need to be able to expect a certain kind of interpretation in order to be able to play well inside of that world, right? And
I think consistency is a good word. It's kind of irrelevant as to what you choose to use and not use, so long as it's a consistent rule set. I have there's one spell in the book that you will never see in any of my campaigns. I won't allow a player to have it, and none of the enemies will ever have it as well. It's the spell called Counterspell. Now this is if we're going through the title of the thing, to follow, to bend, this is to break. I have wholeheartedly removed that spell from all of my games. No players, no enemies, nothing will ever have.
But you love playing Blue Decks.
I love playing Blue Decks and Magic, yes. But Counterspell is the antithesis of narrative intrigue in my mind. You know what I mean? It's the opposite of fun. If I had to make it real quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember.
You're a play. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I remember allowing Morgan to have Counterspell in the Starfinder campaign.
How much you regret that?
About as much as everything in that campaign.
No, but that's Counterspell. For those who don't know, Laura, can you look up the exact definition for me real quick?
But I feel like when it was like frequently, for the sake of having combat be fun and concise for everybody, I didn't have you up. There was only one instance maybe that I had you guys up against a large number of enemies. Usually it's one big thing so that combat goes more fluid and that there's more time focused on the players actually doing things. So when there is one very powerful singular enemy and their spell gets countered by one of you every time, you guys just beat up on the thing and nothing else happens.
Yeah, so Counterspell, for those that may not have immediate knowledge of it, is you attempt to interrupt a creature in the process of casting a spell. If the creature is casting a spell of 3rd level or lower, its spell fails and has no effect. If it is casting a spell of 4th level or higher, you make an ability check using your spellcasting ability. The DC equals 10 plus the spell's level. On a success, the creature's spell fails and it has no effect. And then if you cast it at higher spell slot levels, so the spell has no effect if its level is less than or equal to the level of the spell slot you use. So I agree that Counterspell is a highly OP spell, especially getting it at 3rd level. As a 3rd level spell, that is a super freaking low level to suddenly be able to counter bad guys' stuff and just say nope, a giant nope to things.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's not just...
I like the DC aspect of it. I wish that they had to roll every time instead of just getting a straight up nope for it.
Which could be an amendment that a person could choose to make.
True, yeah.
But legit, Google Counterspell and you're going to find Reddit arguments back and forth of whether Counterspell is a valid spell that should even be in existence.
And I'm not talking about whether or not other people should remove it from their stuff. I'm simply speaking from my GM perspective and the things I do. I removed it because, in my opinion, if a player does that against one of my monsters or a creature, I have the power to say, okay, another wizard shows up and counters that. I have the power to say, oh, I rolled high enough that I passed your DC check. I have the power to say that, oh, it's non-counterable due to something you don't know about. I have all of the power in that perspective as the GM. It feels unfair for me to ever have counterspell in the game for either side.
Right. And that is your rule. That's that when you start talking about your table, your rules. Mm-hmm. That's one of your rules. You also don't like psionic powers. You're not a big fan of that.
I don't like them. Right. I don't like them because I used to play 3-5. I don't know if they're what they're like these days. Right. I don't like in 3-5. It was basically you were more powerful than God wandering around to level 5.
But yeah, those are those things that as a GM you've decided not in my campaign. Not going to happen. Laura, do you have any of those? Do you have any go-tos? You're like, fuck no, that ain't happening.
I despise and probably will never let a Hexblade Warlock play at my table. Just as a character creation standpoint, I hate Hexblade Warlocks.
And those used to be psionics when there was 3-5. Just saying.
Yeah, they are overpowered. They are ridiculously overpowered. Especially if they get any kind of magical weapon, it just becomes ridiculous. So there will be no Hexblades in a game with me.
Bars in chat has a great explanation that concisely defines why I don't use counterspell. It's a mechanic that annoyingly halts gameplay.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
It just stops forward momentum. And I don't like those mechanics. Mm-hmm. I don't think they work.
Phil, do you have anything that you're like at this point? Fuck no, that'll never be in one of my campaigns ever again.
I think he's gonna say Chad.
Simone DeRosa and his
I don't think I ever want to run a campaign.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to fluff Chad's ego right now, but I don't know if I ever want to run a campaign without Chad again.
Oh.
He's so
fluff.
Now, if I could get rid of Michael as a player in my campaign.
You should
I'm going to try to buy your house with a brick.
That should never be in one of my campaigns.
Now chat's just doing that.
Yep. I think, Phil, do you have
I think I don't want to let anybody fly ever again.
Interesting.
And I want to get rid of Mage Hand. No flying, no Mage Hand.
Okay. All right.
It ruins every dungeon puzzle.
Mage Hand, the purpose of Mage Hand is to destroy dungeon puzzles.
True.
They basically don't exist in a lot of cases with Mage Hand in the game. That's kind of the point of Mage Hand. It's to either steal shit that you shouldn't have or destroy a puzzle that somebody else worked really hard on. That's the point of Mage Hand.
So, going back to these rules, it seems like there's a couple things going on here. One, is we all think that, things need to be kind of consistent, right? Everybody needs to know what is or what isn't, what's being bent or what's being broken.
Well, not everyone needs to know it, but as the GM, I think it is your job to know exactly what those consistent rules are.
Right.
You don't have to go through it with your group, but if it comes up once and you do it differently a second time later on, then you're cheating.
Right. You're kind of setting.
I know.
Yeah.
I know as the GM, you're setting the rules and you can do whatever you want, but it's not you versus them. It's you're all on the same team, just trying to get through and have a good time.
Right.
So if you're bending the rule, if you're breaking or bending the rules in an inconsistent manner, you're cheating.
Right. So be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, right. I mean, it's okay to do something that's cool, to let something slide, to bend a little bit to make, for a good narrative choice, but be fair, be consistent. Yeah, your table, your rules, but make sure everybody has fun, including yourself, right?
Yeah. And you need to hold yourself to the same rules that you hold your players to. I think that's also very important.
Right.
You don't get to. There are a couple of exceptions. Fudging dice rolls, for instance, players never fudge dice rolls. If you're a player, whatever you roll is what you roll. You're stuck with that. GMs, quite frankly, sometimes you're supposed to fudge dice rolls. I rolled. You guys remember the night where I rolled 4 nat 20s on you, right? 5. There was a 6th one in there too. And I'm like, it was like 4th in the row, and I'm like, it misses. Declare it misses.
And I mean,
killing everybody.
That might mean as the GM, you shouldn't have your dice roller on camera. Just, give yourself the opportunity to throw that shit.
You shouldn't at all, because there are often also times when the DM needs to be rolling things that the players don't need to know about.
Without knowledge, yeah.
Without knowledge of the players having that. Whether there's an enemy that has some kind of stealth or something like that. Yeah, the GM should never have their rolls telecast to the party.
That's my favorite thing in all of role playing, by the way. Slight aside, but not really. When you as the GM go, can everybody roll perception real quick? And then everybody rolls under like 10, and they go, okay, what do we see? Nothing. And they all go, bitch. There's a fucking dragon in this room.
I love to just randomly roll dice so they can hear that the dice are rolling, and then they're like, why are you rolling dice for? Nothing.
No reason.
Sometimes there is a reason. Sometimes I'm just rolling dice to make people paranoid.
And then you just mutter something real quick. What's fireball again? Let me Google that real quick.
Let me Google something real quick. Here, hold on.
I just gotta hold up. What's fall damage?
Let's wrap up. So
1d6 per 10 feet.
Let's wrap this up. So if anything that you think needs to be hit again or something new before we take off about rules, bending, following, breaking. Mike, go.
Bending and breaking, always do for the sake of fun. Feel free to break a rule or remove a rule for the sake of fun and enjoyment or narrative. Feel free to bend a rule for the sake of fun, enjoyment, and narrative. But follow the rules as much as possible, because without them, there is no structure. There is no point.
Laura, what do you got?
Yes, I echo all of that. Absolutely. That I couldn't have said anything better. I will just say, even though that TPK on Thursday made sense and worked well with what we were doing, because it was just a 2-episode thing, they don't feel good. So the GMs that are out there legitimately trying to TPK, find a new GM.
They got something going on in their life.
Yeah, because it's not fun as a GM to kill characters, even if they're just throwaway one-shot created on D&D Beyond characters. It's not fun.
And it's certainly not fun for the players. I don't think it is. I mean, to get so.
I feel like you all had fun, even though everyone died. Hopefully.
Well, yeah. I mean, in this,
I wish Morgan would have been there for Thursday.
Oh,
the
man.
amount of bitching.
Yes, in the context of that two-shot, yes, it was absolutely supposed to happen that way. I couldn't have thought of anything better. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And remember, you can see all of the campaigns we talk about. You can find us on Twitch, see us live, catch a few episodes there. To catch up, go over to YouTube, all under the Durnk Industries title. But yeah, we're gaming live on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, and then of course right here on Tuesday afternoons. If you want to join us on Discord, you got to come see us live, because that's the only place that we're going to give you that invite. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll do some gaming. Gonna see if we can ever get through this whole, D&D 5 campaign. We just drag our fucking feet. How long has it been? Like 2.5 years or some shit we've been playing that fucking campaign.
It's been over a year. I'm sorry.
It's been 50-something.
I'll end it.
It's our fault.
Fuck it.
It's
No,
Krasden.
I think we just don't really want to let go of these characters.
I know the way it ended.
We're watching Come watch Krasden. All right, fine. Are we out?
I'm gonna kill
Oh
you.
shit, that's me.